And welcome back. Welcome back. This is a very special edition coming to you from the American Uncensored News Network. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show. I'm Rick Trader. My co host is Sharon Angle. Sharon is embedded in Israel. And Sharon, we do have a special guest with us. Please make that introduction.
It's my pleasure always to introduce Clare M. Lopez, who is the founder and president of Lopez Liberty LLC. She was a career operations officer with the CIA and publishes widely as a strategic policy and intelligence expert. Clare is also a senior advisory board member, Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. Clare, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thanks very much. Glad to be with both of you today, although the circumstances are not ones that make us very glad.
Not at all. And in fact, being here in Israel is a bit stunning when you're expecting to have things go as usual. And then they say, well, we're declaring war. We've been attacked and now there's a war, to be in the middle of a war zone. But I'm wondering, have you ever had that experience yourself, been in a country where war has broken out?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I, with my Marine Corps husband and our little daughter at the time, 3 years old, 3 years old, we served at the U.S. Embassy in El Salvador, during the last 2 years of the Civil War there. And we and the Salvadorans did not expect what happened, which was the final assault of the insurgents, the communist insurgents, FMLN, Frente Farabundo Martí para Liberación Nacional, which were supported, backed, armed, trained, funded by Cuba, communist Cuba, and then Soviet Union. And we got caught in the middle of that offensive. The fighting went on literally, combat, neighborhood to neighborhood, as the Salvadoran military had to push the guerrillas back after a surprise attack took over a good part of the capital city of San Salvador. And that combat went neighborhood to neighborhood, including ours. I mean, we're talking a machine gun nest right down the street from us, helicopter gunships with Salvadoran military hanging out the door with a 50 cal. RPG took off a chunk of our roof. Little daughter had to be evacuated to cousins in Texas for a while. And my husband and I then, we moved in together with other people so as to be closer and not spread out all over. When we moved in with this one single lady, she gave us the upstairs, she had the downstairs. And that was the first night or one of the next nights afterwards, our neighborhood was subjected to a 3-hour mortar attack. And there was just nothing you could do except listen to it coming in, over and over again for 3 hours. So yeah, I know very well what that's like.
Well, and it kind of sounds like what we're in right here. This was a surprise attack. Unless you thought this was coming, we didn't expect it. What do you think? Did the Israelis expect it? It seems like it was a surprise.
No, there was a massive intelligence failure on the part of both the Israelis and the United States. There is reporting about possibly a cyber attack that could have possibly blinded the Israelis to what was coming, but that doesn't seem to cover, why they didn't have better sources on the ground that would have picked up what must have been very extensive planning before this attack was launched on Saturday, the 7th of October here, 2023, on the anniversary, the 50th year anniversary of the 1973 Yom Kippur War, and the day that it was launched. And so I do think there was a massive intelligence failure. I have just written recently yesterday an op-ed piece that I'm waiting for publication on that talks about this intelligence blinding in United States. And I suspect, I do not know, but I suspect there is some kind of linkage between the massive Iranian information operation, propaganda operation, infiltration of the United States national security agencies, Department of State and Department of Defense in particular. We'll recall, of course, the reporting about former U.S. Iran envoy Robert Malley, who lost his security clearance and post at the State Department some months ago. I think that's the tip of the iceberg. I think that infiltration information operation may have something to do with the fact that at least we here in the United States were apparently unaware of these preparations for this attack.
So we are now hearing that Hamas was actually just a cover-up for a bigger invasion from Lebanon. Is that what you're kind of getting to? Is that we're going to see the second strike?
No, not at all. Quite the opposite, actually. I listened to a briefing from a former retired, very senior IDF officer today, and of course have been, following other reporting. There have been some Hezbollah rocket, I guess, mortar launches from the northern border area with Israel. The Israeli IDF, of course, quickly returned fire and demolished the launch points for those attacks. But it would seem that is not the same thing as Hezbollah jumping into this, allied with Hamas, in a full force way. It would seem to indicate, and from the briefing that we heard and other reporting I've seen, that Hezbollah does not want to get into this at this point in time and enter into war with Israel.
So we hear a lot about the technology here in Israel, the Iron Dome, and they've said that actually is working. Is that what your IDF officer is saying too, that they've been able to kind of thwart some of the rocket fire that's been coming in?
Well, reporting from many different places indicates that, of course, Israel has a multi-layered anti-aircraft defense system that go by names, Arrow, David Sling, and of course there are Patriot missiles there, as well as the Iron Dome. And I think they have begun to deploy the brand new laser-based Iron Beam defense system too. Yes, those overlapping, intersecting air defense systems have been very, very effective. Some projectiles have gotten through, but this attack was preceded, by, I think I heard something like 2,000 missile launches out of Gaza into Israel, reaching with air raid sirens at least as far north as Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So they've been very effective at countering that. But the worst part of this attack and invasion was not just the air assault or even the attempted naval amphibious landing off the Mediterranean Sea, but rather the overland bursting through the barriers that Israel had put up, those high-tech sensor embedded fences, saw bulldozers just going straight through them and opening them up, and then the hordes of the savage jihadis pouring through.
Now, I just want to flip this just a little. We've also heard that Israel is not sitting still for this, that they have fired into Gaza City, and that they may have killed some of the higher up officials in this Hamas war.
Well, they certainly have begun to fight back. We heard Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday putting Israel on a war footing, the first time since the 1973 Yom Kippur War that has happened in a formal way. He has invited political opposition leaders, Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz to join an emergency government. It looks like perhaps they and their parties will do so for the duration of this war. And they have begun to mass forces, the Israeli Defense Forces headed south towards Gaza. I think this time they realize they absolutely have no choice but to clean out Gaza of these jihadi terrorists, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ. And the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, I heard also issue a warning to civilian residents of Gaza to evacuate, get out, because the IDF is coming.
We've also heard that they are going in and getting nests of terrorists in other communities. I'm here very close to Nablus, and they have a terror community there, and we've been hearing that they're going in to clean that out as well. Have you heard that?
Yes, that's been going on actually for a while, even preceding this attack from yesterday. What is happening basically is the Palestinian Authority, and specifically the president for life, I guess, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, they're losing their grip on the communities in Samaria in particular, Nablus among them, Jenin, Tulkarm. And as that happens, these various towns are basically run by clans. It's a clan-based society, and each of the clans, has their own militia. And those militias have been staging attacks into Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, other places. And so even before the Hamas attack of yesterday, October 7, the IDF and security forces had been going into places like Jenin and Nablus and Tulkarm to root out these jihadi terrorist based organizations there. Lion's Den comes to mind as one of them. I think that one's in Jenin. I'm sure there are others there in Nablus too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I know that Rick wants to ask a bunch of questions as well, so I'm going to go to a break here after this one last question. He's trying to get his ears
Sharon,
on that.
what we're going to do is just have a little separation. We won't be going to a break. I want to.
Okay.
Well, I'll just reintroduce Clare, and we're speaking with Clare M. Lopez. She's the founder and president of Lopez Liberty LLC. She was a career operations officer with the CIA and publishes widely on strategic policy and intelligence. She's also a senior advisory member of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. Sharon, your last question, and then I'll pick it up.
It's about Israeli sovereignty. There's been a lot of movement in that direction at the Knesset. There's a lot of push, especially from Judea and Samaria, to say once and for all that they are a sovereign part of Israel, and to take the Gaza back. Frankly, they think that was a mistake. You don't get peace when you give away land, and now this is just an example of why that doesn't work. Do you think that this is kind of a movement that's going to now assure sovereignty once they get through this war?
Are you speaking about Judea and Samaria or Gaza?
Judea, Samaria, Gaza, all these places where 1993 was the time when they made the ABC zones in Judea and Samaria, giving away land again for peace. And then, of course, in 2006 or 7, they gave away the Gaza Strip for peace.
Right. So Judea and Samaria have been Eretz Israel for 3,000 years. And legally speaking, those areas were both part of the British mandate that had authority for that area in the wake of World War I and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. All of that land under the British mandate was to be granted to the Jewish people to form a modern day state of Israel. But the British are the ones that split it up and gave away big chunks of it to Jordan, which didn't exist before then, a brand new country. And then it was called Transjordan, the other side of the Jordan River, where Judea and Samaria are located. They rightly ought to be and have been part of Eretz Israel, again, legally speaking, and since 3,000 years ago. As for Gaza, that's not quite the same situation. However, when Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon decided to give up Gaza in 2005, that I think was a tragic mistake. Not only the uprooting of Jewish communities, schools, synagogues, dragging people out of their homes, Jewish people dragged by the IDF out of their homes. As you said, Sharon, exactly, gave up land, and it turned into a nest of jihadi terrorism that has now caused unspeakable damage and horror to the people of Israel. So there is discussion now about what would happen after Hamas is destroyed. And make no mistake, I think that the leadership of Israel right now, per Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments, they are going to destroy Hamas, its capability to ever again attack, harm, kill Israelis. But what happens after that is a little less clear right now. And of course, they don't really have time to think about that right now. But there is speculation beginning about what will happen afterwards. It was never part of Eretz Israel per se. Would it come under maybe some sort of international supervised entity, maybe Jordan, Egypt together, maybe supervised by Saudi Arabia? I've heard speculation to that effect. It's very much an unsettled question right now. The number one thing right now is defeat Hamas, get the jihadis off of Israeli land, and finish Hamas as a threat to Israel forever.
Joining us today here on the Conservative Commandos radio show is Clare M. Lopez. She's the founder and president of Lopez Liberty LLC, career operations officer with the CIA, publishes widely, and Clare is also a senior advisory board member for the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. And Clare, when you're talking about Gaza, Gaza is a strip of land. Primarily, there's a city there called Gaza City. Roughly 2 million people inhabit Gaza City. Clare Lopez, a lot of people say it is time to clean out that rat's nest. Give the people of Gaza City 3 days to get out and destroy it. Wipe the rats out of their nest, destroy the nest. Is that too radical of a view? Would world opinion crush Israel after that?
It does seem to be the plan of Prime Minister Netanyahu and his senior military commanders in the IDF. They have already issued the warning to ordinary citizens, ordinary people, civilians in Gaza to get out. I think that's going to be very difficult. I would expect there would have to be land bridge openings made, for example, to Egypt. Where are they going to go? But yes, the Hamas and PIJ, now, don't forget Palestinian Islamic Jihad, both Hamas and PIJ, backed, funded, armed, trained, supported by the Islamic Republic of Iran, which has boasted about their support to them, and Hamas in return has boasted that some of their drone capabilities that they used against Israel in this attack came from Iran. All that does have to be cleaned out. What is complicating the picture, of course, right now are the numerous, perhaps dozens of hostages that the terrorists have taken out of Israel and dragged back with them into Gaza,
Do you think
perhaps in the
do you
tunnels
think
underneath.
do you think Israel should quid pro quo on that? Go in, take hostages, bring them out, and say, you know what? We'll exchange one for one. How much do you love your people? We hope you love your people as much as we love ours.
Well, I wouldn't.
I mean, Claire, what I'm getting at, seriously, this may sound radical, but this has been a problem in Israel for 75 years. You know, these groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the PLO have been raining havoc and destruction into Israel, killing and injuring people ad nauseum. I would like to think that the Israeli government would finally take control and say, world opinion can go to you know where. We are going to protect ourselves. No one else is interested in protecting us. Joe Biden says, oh, please act with restraint. Restraint. 500 Israelis are dead. 2,000 more are injured. And those numbers are, no one really knows what the numbers are. But Israel has to protect Israel. The United States isn't going to do it. Great Britain's not going to do it. No one else is going to do it. I do believe it's time for Israel to protect Israel, wipe them out once and for all.
I think this is the message that we're hearing from Prime Minister Netanyahu and senior leadership of his government and, of course, the IDF. The intent is not to take hostages, but rather to dispatch those jihadi terrorists to their 72 virgins as fast as possible. They
Right.
will, of course, do their best to avoid collateral damage, but I think that will be less of a concern this time around than perhaps it has been in the past. Ergo, Netanyahu's warning to the civilians, get out now, because the IDF is going to come in and they are going to destroy Hamas and PIJ capabilities to attack Israel ever again.
Claire, you mentioned to Sharon that this has been a massive failure of intelligence, both for the Israelis and for the U.S. What does that say about our intelligence agency? Has our intelligence agency been eroded under this presidency?
Well, certainly the capabilities and the focus of our national security have been eroded under the Biden administration. But I was specifically pointing, when I was commenting there to Sharon, specifically pointing to this recently uncovered Iranian information operation that succeeded in penetrating over a number of years. This dates back to 2014, when an organization called the Iran Experts Initiative was established by the Iranian regime, specifically out of the Iranian Foreign Relations Ministry, and recruited Americans to help spread their propaganda in favor of Iranian regime positions. I think that over the course of, we're talking 9 years, from 2014 until today, 2023, we're talking 9 years worth of penetration, infiltration, co-option, and recruitment, frankly, recruitment inside of our national security community. So that has to have had an effect, I think, on our United States failure to perceive what the Iranian regime was planning and plotting with Hamas, Hezbollah, PIJ, and let's face it, Hamas has a presence in certainly Samaria. I'm not so sure about Judea. Samaria certainly, but the Biden administration in particular, but those preceding it too, failed to understand the nature of that enemy.
Let's talk about Iran. You know, Iran just got a real nice Christmas gift, $6 billion of unfrozen assets. Two questions. Do you think any of this $6 billion was feeding this invasion, and the fact that they got this $6 billion, was that the impetus for this attack, where Iran says,
Well,
okay, we got the money now, we don't have to worry about US opinion, go ahead with your attack?
well, I certainly think that the promise of receiving those funds featured into the calculations made by the Iranian regime in backing Hamas and PID for this invasion. As of the moment now, that 6 billion, and oh, by the way, another 10 billion owed by Iraq to Iran for purchase of gas from Iran, also held back until recently by sanctions, then released by the Biden administration, the sanctions release. Total we're talking is actually 16 billion. And even though that money has not yet flowed per se to the Iranian regime, not yet, the 6 billion is in a bank in Qatar in the Middle East. And the other money is held by Iraq still, but the sanctions on it have been released. That means the Iranian regime knows it's going to get it, which means that it can go ahead and probably did go ahead and free up other money that may have been held back previously for other purposes, and use that money knowing that it will be replenished now.
Can it now be frozen?
Coming.
Can that money now be frozen? Is there any money left that can now be frozen?
If there were the will to
hey,
do
this
it.
money is going to go to Israel to rebuild.
If there were the will to do that, sanctions could be reimposed tomorrow by the Biden administration, including on the ongoing sale of energy supplies to many different places, Middle East, as far as China. Those sanctions have not been removed per se, but they are not being enforced. Tomorrow, the Biden administration could take the decision to begin enforcing those sanctions if it wanted to. And if the pressure on it from Congress, from we the people, is strong enough, maybe it can be pushed to enforcing the sanctions and maybe even reinstating the sanctions, that we're talking about here, Rick.
You mentioned to Sharon that Hezbollah probably is not planning another an attack from the north. Why not? Why not, Claire? Why wouldn't they use this as an opportunity?
I mean, they could, and I'm not saying they won't. It just looks right now, the indications are they are not ready. They don't feel ready. They don't want to get involved in this particular war between Israel and Hamas.
All right. Claire, there's all types of numbers out there, numbers of rockets, numbers of dead, numbers of injured. Can you talk about these numbers that it's interesting to report on? It's interesting to hear. People are interested in these numbers. Could you talk to us about these numbers, what we're hearing?
I really hesitate to cite numbers because even as we're speaking, people are dying and being hurt. But I will say that it looks like more than 2,000 Israelis have been injured, and that number is sure to go up, and many hundreds. 600 plus, maybe the numbers are today, of those killed, Israelis killed. People need to understand, and I'm looking most at the Twitter feed. Yeah, I still call it Twitter. The Twitter feed is showing these horrific videos of these jihadi terrorists invading homes in towns near Gaza, like Sadaqat, where I've been many times, dragging people out of their homes, elderly people, women, children, slaughtering them on the spot, or taking them hostage over into Gaza, where, again, as we say, something like maybe dozens are being held. We don't know. The news I've heard this morning is that among those taken hostage, and also, by the way, killed, a large number of young people were attending
Wow.
a music festival.
By
Uh,
the way, did you see how they attacked that music
a
festival?
music festival for peace.
Right. They
And the
attacked that
women,
festival by using a powered parachute.
yeah.
And you know, these poor people, we hear all the time how poor these people are, how bad they have it. They can barely eat, but they can afford. And by the way, I know this for a fact, Claire, because I've flown these powered parachutes. They're anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 each, and for poor, oppressed people, that's a heck of a lot of
Yeah,
money.
well, that's not coming from the poor oppressed
Of
people
course
of
not.
Gaza. That is that money, that funding, that maybe know-how, knowledge to build them perhaps locally, is coming from Iran. I think we all know that,
Well,
as
they're
well as
easy
the
to
other
build.
kinds of weapons that were used.
You can build those in a day or two. Really.
Yeah.
I've worked
So
on
what
the
happened is
construction
that
of it.
they attacked this gathering of young people at this music festival for peace. It was located at the Kibbutz Re'im. It's a suburb of Ofakim, which is in the southern part of Israel, close to Gaza.
Mhm.
And it looks like they've just uncovered a mass grave of over
Oh my gosh.
250
Oh my
bodies.
gosh. Oh my
And here's the
gosh.
thing, among them, and also among the hostages that apparently reportedly have been taken into Gaza, are many foreign nationals. They're not just Israelis. There
Mm,
are Americans among them. There
wow.
are other Europeans. I've seen Germany, Canada, Norway, other nationalities. This will bring in many other countries of the world this time, because their own nationals are killed and injured and kidnapped. I think this time Hamas and Iran have badly miscalculated.
Claire Lopez, Lopez Liberty LLC. What is the future? How much fallout is going to fall on the shoulders of Bibi Netanyahu?
Well, we don't want to be piling on, um, the Israeli intelligence or military forces at a time when they're fighting for their lives.
Right.
We don't want to pile on them. The assessment of what happened, what didn't happen, can come later, and that assessment will happen, and they will realize what went wrong, why they didn't have advance warning, and they'll take steps to correct it. But for right now, it's time to liberate all of the villages and towns of Israel close to Gaza, and then go into Gaza and clean it out.
Mhm.
Claire Lopez, again, we want to thank you so much for joining us, especially on the short notice that we gave you. Claire, at a time like this, I want to ask this question in closing. What question are we not asking? What more information do we need to get out there right now?
Well, I think number one might be to name the enemy. The enemy is Hamas, of course. Hamas is the Gaza branch of the Egyptian jihadist Muslim Brotherhood. In the United States, we've seen that the US branch of Hamas, Muslim
Wow.
Brotherhood, is called CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, which has already come out with a statement in support of Hamas.
By
And
the
there
way,
are
Claire, I
demonstrations
get
springing up.
emails. I get emails from them every day. Well, every week I get emails from them.
There are demonstrations now being planned by such actors here in the United States. I would urge anybody listening, watching us, be aware if any of that is happening in your neighborhood, your community. Contact your elected representatives to denounce these jihadist Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas supported demonstrations. And then I think also by naming who the enemy is, I would urge everybody, please go online and find the Hamas Covenant, PDF of the Hamas Covenant. In the very opening lines of that covenant, it says Hamas. Hamas is, first of all, I call it a covenant because it is an agreement not between men, it is between Hamas and God. That's what a covenant is. And it says in the opening lines of the covenant, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until the forces of Islam will obliterate it. Paraphrasing there just a little bit, but those are the words in the opening lines of the Hamas covenant. It's worth reading what this is about. This is not about the poor oppressed people you're talking about there, Rick, who are as much oppressed under Hamas totalitarian rule inside of Gaza as anywhere else. It is about the leadership of Hamas and PIJ and all Islamic terrorism that is based on a faithful, devout, observant obedience to the Quran, to the Hadiths, the Sirah, the Sharia, and also the tafsirs.
Well, now I got something else to keep me up at night worrying about. Clare Lopez, we want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Conservative Commandos radio show. Very special edition coming to you from the AUN-TV network. Clare, please tell our audience how they could follow you and find out more about Clare M. Lopez and Lopez Liberty LLC.
Well, thanks to both of you, Sharon and Rick, for having me again. I'm on Twitter at Clare M. Lopez. I'm on Facebook, same thing, my name. I'm on Telegram at Lopez Liberty, and I'm on Truth Social at Clarecho, CLARECHO at Clarecho.
Clare Lopez, again, thank you so much for joining us. Take care and God bless.
Thank you.
This has been a very special presentation of the Conservative Commandos radio show coming to you from the AUN television network. I'm Rick Trader. My co-host is Sharon Engel. Our guest has been Clare M. Lopez of Lopez Liberty LLC. We'll be back with another guest in a little bit.